reaching too far to reach these things. Welcome to the Amateur Musician. My name is John Hopkins. Right, so now I want to talk to you a little bit about how to set up a drum kit and make sure that you set it up somewhat ergonomically. Make sure that you're comfortable and that you can play and reach everything. And let's have a chat about that. Now, firstly, I want to mention, whenever I set up this drum kit, it turns out a little bit differently. I'm not super fussy about how I set it up. Also, here where I am set up at the moment, this is my wife's art studio. She teaches art here during the weeks. The floor's a little bit uneven, so I'm sitting a bit skew and it's not really comfortable, and you might see me getting quite uncomfortable from time to time. And it's just, unfortunately, this is the space I have to record. But I'm going to go through a couple of things, and if you just keep to these rules for the most part, you're going to be quite comfortable and you're going to be able to play everything, you're going to be able to reach everything. And you can break these rules. I've seen drummers break these rules and sit in totally weird ways and be totally comfortable, and whatever really works for you. But it's good that you have a solid starting point that is comfortable and not going to cause you harm. And then whatever you do after that is sort of none of my business and you can figure it out. So I just want to start off with some basics, right? It's not really complicated. The three most important things that we need to focus on: kick drum, snare drum, hi-hat. And the reason why these are important is because they kind of set you up for your primary ergonomic comfort. Your left leg, if you're a right-handed drummer, if you're a left-handed drummer, you can either play right-handed or you can switch the kit around. Luckily, it's an easy instrument to switch around. But anyway, your left leg is going to be on your hi-hat pedal most of the time. Now, some people would prefer not to play with their foot on the hi-hat pedal. Some people would prefer to play with it on the hi-hat pedal. I say rather set up as if you're going to have it on the pedal all the time, because chances are you're going to use it quite a lot while you play. So your left leg's going to be on that pedal, your right leg is going to be on your kick drum pedal, and then your snare drum is going to have to sit right between your legs. Now, I think that setup, those three things, kind of set me up to be comfortable throughout a performance or throughout a practice session. As long as I've got those three things mostly sorted, I'm going to be able to move the other stuff around quite a lot with a lot of variation and still be comfortable, right? So you'll set your drum throne height, we'll talk about that in a moment, your snare drum height, but then importantly, when you put everything down on the floor, I usually start with the kick drum, I put the pedal down, and then I sit down at the drum kit, I put my throne in its position, and I find the right position for where my right leg feels comfortable with the kick drum. And then I start getting an idea, okay, well, I know where my snare drum's going to go, and I know where my hi-hat's going to go, and where the pedal needs to land. And here's the important thing. I want you to make sure, I just want to switch my camera angle. I want you to make sure that this angle of your legs over here is nice and equal, right? So I don't want one of your legs doing this. Now, obviously, there is a little bit of a sense of I can open my legs wider and just move my torso, and then I've got an equal angle of my two legs. But you definitely don't want to end up in a situation where your one leg is extending out. Your one leg is extending out past how the other leg is, because you're going to end up getting pain in these muscles right over here or somewhere else. I'm not too sure where you might find the pain. It depends on how comfortably you're sitting in general. The other thing I want to talk about is the angle of your knees. So I want to try and make sure that not only the angle of my legs this way is equal and consistent, I want to make sure that the angle of my knees going down to the pedals is consistent. It's not going to help me if my one foot is back here and the other one's up front there, and I've got to rely on all sorts of other muscles to keep me balanced. I want to make sure that my two legs are nice sort of 90-degree angles. Potentially, if you can do that, that would be fantastic. I like to play with my legs going a little bit of a down angle, and the reason for that is when I play heavier styles of music and I use double bass, I like to actually lift my legs up and be able to play heel up on the kick pedals. We'll talk about that in a moment. But generally I say if your legs are flat at the top over here and you've got a 90-degree angle down and your angle of your legs like this is consistent and equal on both sides, and you're sitting like that and you're quite comfortable and you're not under strain, you're in a pretty good place. Your legs are absolutely the things that are going to take up a lot of the strain of keeping you comfortable and potentially your lower back. Like I'm sitting now with this chair on a bit of an angle because this floor isn't so great. I'm definitely feeling it on my lower back a little bit as I'm trying to keep myself up straight. And so it's important that you try not to have that kind of experience. You want to be comfortable and be able to play for long periods of time. Okay, future John here. I've had to move my camera and my whole setup to get this angle, and now it's raining. But I just wanted to show you quickly how to actually use the kick pedal. So this is the kick pedal I've been talking about that kicks the bass drum or the kick drum, right? And basically there's two schools of thought here. You've got your heel up school of thought and your heel down school of thought. Now, in my opinion, there's no right or wrong answer. I use both throughout my playing, but I want to encourage you as you're learning to play now to try and learn heel down. And there's a very important reason why I think we should learn heel down first. So that's basically keeping my heel on the floor as I kick this pedal, right? As opposed to keeping my heel up and kicking the pedal that way. Now, part of the reason why I suggest learning heel down at first is because there's a bunch of muscles in our ankles and our legs here that we have to use to actually get enough power to do heel down, right? And it's important that you actually build those muscles. Now, some people, maybe if you're a runner or something, you've got really, really good muscles there, and it's not going to take you as much time as somebody else to develop strength in these muscles. But developing the strength in those muscles is incredibly important in my opinion. So I'd say start learning this way because it's going to actually benefit you in developing the muscles and the muscle memory to do this. When you play heel up, you don't actually need as much muscle power because your whole leg's weight is coming down on the pedal. Now don't get me wrong, there's some other muscles a little bit more up on the leg where you can't see on the camera angle right now. It's just under your thigh, I'd say. Yeah, it's just like your thigh at the back here. That you also use quite a lot of muscle when you do heel up. But I feel like most people, those muscles are a little bit more developed than the small fine muscles down here. Now, either way, you're going to have to build fitness, but playing heel down is about building strength, right? When we play heel up, we need to build fitness, but strength is easy when we play heel up. Strength is a little bit more difficult when we play heel down. So as we kick that pedal, again, two schools of thought. There's one where we kick it and let the beater move away, and one where we kick it and we hold it up against the drum head. Each are going to provide slightly different sounds, and I think you're going to organically learn both of those as you go through your journey. But keep in mind that there's no right or wrong answer, but they are going to impact your sound. So when you push into the drum head and you dig it in, it's going to produce sort of a shorter, more punchy sound than when you do kick and release. You're giving that bass drum head time to reverberate a lot more. Now I've got cushions in my bass drum in this environment, so it doesn't have a lot of that reverberation, but in some like jazz contexts and stuff, they want to kind of just feather the bass drum, just kind of give it a light tap like that, and it creates more of a boomy bass drum sound than a strong attack bass drum sound or a punchy bass drum sound. So I recommend learning to play heel down first, but not neglecting to play heel up, because heel up is also a valuable technique to learn. So that's just a little quick example of how we use our feet on the kick drum pedal. Alright, so once we've got the snare drum between our legs, nice and comfortable, our legs are going to the side, our high's here, our kick drummer is over there, we need to talk about the height of the snare drum. So we set the height of our throne according to how tall we are and how long our legs are, right? So we get the height of our throne, and then we want the snare drum to just be peeping over the top of our legs. That would kind of be a good starting point. Again, this is all somewhat subjective. You can do whatever works for you. But that's a good starting point, that it just starts peeping over the top of your leg over here. And that helps us if we want to do rim shots and some more advanced techniques down the line, that we can get to those. But what it also helps us with is the angle of our elbow as we play that snare drum. So let's talk about the ergonomics of our elbows somewhat a little bit before we continue. So when we're playing our drums, we want to get a lot of action from our wrists. Again, we're going to get to how we hold the stick and stuff in a moment, but we want to make sure that we get quite a lot of movement from our wrists and not as much movement from our elbows. So for me, ergonomically, in terms of height of the snare and the throne and everything, I kind of like to make sure that my elbows are at a kind of 90-degree angle when I'm playing the snare drum. And then if I can, I like to try and make sure that I don't need to extend those elbows too much as I move around the kit. The more I have to extend the elbows, I always see it this way. My elbows are slow. My wrists are fast. Right now, I'm not the best drummer in the world, but still my wrists are way faster than my elbows. And I'm sure that's true for most drummers. And yet again, our shoulders are probably even slower than our elbows. And so as we get to these smaller joints, they become sort of faster and faster, in my opinion. And so I want to use my elbows as little as possible as I move around the drum kit. I want to keep it wrist action. I don't want to have to rely on my elbows doing too much work to keep up with the song. So I like to keep that angle about 90, and I like to make sure that as I move around my kit, I'm not ending up stretching too far to get to the things that I need to get to. I just want to have to kind of move my shoulders around, maybe project my elbows and my shoulders a little bit, because obviously not everything is a snare drum. But that's quite an important thing when we get to setting up, especially sort of the rest of the kit. We've got our kick drum, our snare drum, our hi-hat. Now the most important thing is just making sure that nothing else is so far out of reach that we have to stretch for it or we have to reach for it. Wherever you go with this, I've seen people put toms this side of them and toms in all sorts of places and cymbals in all sorts of places. You can put the stuff sort of wherever you really want, but I would recommend that we don't get ourselves into a position where we're reaching too far to reach these things. We want to kind of keep our elbows tucked in a little bit and just moving comfortably around our kit. And you've got quite a lot of reach with these drumsticks to get quite far without having to extend your elbows all the way out far where you don't need to go. I'll see you in the drum courses.